had the privilege of being an ARC reader for LauraAnnProductions' book, The VIPER'S Library. Before I continue reviewing this book, I have to admit the truth, which is LauraAnnProductions and I interact with each other a lot on TikTok, and I consider her a social media friend. So when she announced a call out for ARC reads, I signed up without hesitation. I accidentally signed up twice. I was willing to support an online friend/author. My opinion of her story may be possibly affected by our online interactions, even though LauraAnnProductions is familiar with how I review stories and has said I want an honest review, good and bad. Regardless of whether I think low or high of this story, I do hope that LauraAnnProductions and I still interact in a positive light in social media. Regardless of what I think low or high of this story, I encourage readers to support their online friends. Okay, second point, before I give my review, readers, this story needs your undivided attention. The less distractions, the better. Just trust me on that. I am grateful for the trigger warnings, which include violence, torture, abuse of sexual and emotional abuse, alcohol and body insecurities, as well as familiar abuse between families. The minute I flicked open the book, I was introduced to the world with, according to my phone, 2 pages of maps, which actually felt really nice to look at. I haven't seen maps in books for quite a while. There's even a quick rundown glossary of types of characters with the language they're used throughout the story, which again I appreciated. When the audience is introduced to the world, it's the end of a battle, but what I liked is it gave enough detail to show how bad this battle was without telling us about the battle at the same time, even giving us insights on who the antagonist may be throughout the whole story. I'm not sure if it's specified or if I've missed it, but by the 5% mark, besides the obvious tellings, I assumed that this isn't a modern story, but rather a story set in the 1400s due to its mentioning of plagues. Obviously, I could be wrong, and it could be a modern story using past touches, but that's my takeaway, a period piece, which normally I'm not a huge fan of. When I got a few pages into chapter 2, my first thought was, damn, this is Blade. You know, the vampire hunter in Marvel? Dante and his crew just straight up reminded me of that movie that I've seen countless times. Whether they're supposed to be similar to a superhero character is a different matter. Actually, remind me to ask if Dante is based off Blade. About 10% into the story, I really love the way the details of the scenes, such as buildings or character descriptions, were done. It played the perfect balance between luring the audience in while also not killing the scene the author wanted to describe. Even though I admit at the beginning I consider myself an LauraAnnProductions online friend, but while I was reading this, I may have forgotten who she was aside from the book I had on my phone, so my opinion has so far only been swayed by the world I've been pulled into. I had gotten 10% into the story and loving the journey so far. When I got to chapter 3, I had one tiny issue, but it's probably more of a thing to do with my eyesight rather than the author issue. But the text under the chapters, it looked quite tiny on my phone screen. It may be better suited for a physical book rather than a teeny phone screen, but so far that's my only issue. Sometimes pretty stuff doesn't always transfer well over technology. Like I said, it could be a me issue rather than the book itself. At the 21% mark, I discovered that I love all the characters. Not sure if I'm supposed to or not, but I absolutely love the way that the author created them. I love how each of the characters feel like they could be real people rather than words on a page. With the way that they're described, I could have amazing imaginary imagery in my head. Amelia did let me on a secret that Zelenka is her take on Yelena from Black Widow. Of course, I loved Black Widow, so knowing that little tidbit, I could definitely see that in Zelenka. The further I delved into the story, the more I can imagine it being told on a big screen in the right hands. I could imagine this book being done beautifully as a movie or a TV series. At the 40% mark, I began to wail like a baby at one heartbreaking scene. Damn it, shouldn't have read that scene while I was waiting for doors to open at a stage play. Yes, this book is not to be read in public because of high emotions, though sometimes there's no choice because of life. When I got to the 50% mark, I realized this type of story needs to be told in a physical copy. Nothing wrong with reading via ebook, which is what I did for this arc, but I feel like the attention to details that is scattered throughout this book would grasp a bigger pull via physical book, because there is cute little designs in each corner of chapter headings, as well as the text under the chapter headings. I know once this book has its release date, I'll be buying a physical copy because I want to see the full beauty of VIPER'S library. The more I read into the story, the more I realize that if it wasn't a mythical storyline, vampires, dragons, and witches, it'd still be a story of family, a disconnect between stepsisters, a closeness to brothers, a need for companionship, a drive to find peace amongst a life you wouldn't dare on your own worst enemy. The spice in this is a perfect balance for me, enough to lure in the reader while also knowing when to stop. Hell, even the dialogue managed to not seem overdone during the spice, because there have been times when I've read books and I'm like, pump the brakes please. I love how the ending gives you an insight on what book 2 will be following from, not just the great battle, but also the reunion at the last chapter. I also liked how at the end of the book there was a character list to remind the readers who was who, which again has been super helpful because at times there were so many characters to take in that you're like, hold on, give me a second. So referring back to that would have been a great help, but maybe just bring it forward. But again, that character list nonetheless was still incredibly helpful. So Emilia Dashfire, I cannot wait for book 2. Once this book drops, I will be buying a physical copy. So please let me know when book 2 drops, because I loved the Viper's Library. It's such an engaging, hooking world that deserves to be shared amongst the book talk community.